Alright, hopefully this microphone gets me better audio quality. So I want to talk about the NPC meme, which is a political meme. And, I'm not a political analyst or a political activist, but, everything is related. You can't just compartmentalize topics. Also, this meme, the NPC meme, didn't always used to be political. Or at least I thought it wasn't political when I made a video about it a while back. And then like 2 days later, this guy, this political figure on YouTube named Paul Joseph Watson made a video about this NPC meme and basically said, all those libtards, they're all NPCs. And on the surface, it's like, libtards are dumb because like they believe things without questioning them. Like, they don't have a brain, ha ha ha. And that's just funny. It's a meme, it's a joke. And that I don't have a problem with. Really. And I'm not going to just be outraged and talk about the political side of it. I just want to talk about I just talk about consciousness. That's my thing. However, if I said hypothetically that Paul Joseph Watson was a political agent, a government agent, running a program, a part of a program that's taxpayer funded, a government who pushed not only the NPC meme from the very beginning, but has been pushing dualism for decades. And the NPC meme really becomes an issue, in this dualist kind of environment. In this culture where so many people have a dualist mindset. So all those things put together, that's the outrageous part. And it's not an issue today, but it could be an issue. So I'm preemptively making a video saying that something could be an issue. I hope it's not an issue in the future, but I feel like I have a little bit of responsibility being one of the few people that really fully understands the gravity of the situation. Of course, nothing serious has happened yet. I'm just saying it could. And I just want to point that out ahead of time to maybe warn people, especially people who would watch my other videos, people who are into consciousness. So, the NPC meme, well, so there's this theme that I see a lot in like sci-fi stories, where there's some kind of, maybe like a robot, there's robots or aliens or something that are pretending to be humans. And or maybe they even think they're human. And you can't tell the difference. Just looking at them, you can't tell. And the average person, usually in these stories, the average person has no way of knowing. There's no test that can be done. So, for example, like synths in Fallout 4, that's an example, or like something like replicants from Blade Runner. Or that movie They Live, where that guy has sunglasses and he can tell who's an alien or not. You know, that one where he walks into the bank and says, "I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum." There's a bunch of stories, or, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, something like that. A bunch of sci-fi stories like that. And so a common theme is that because the average person can't tell the difference between one of these pretenders and a real person, all they can do is kind of use their intuition and guess. And of course, sometimes that's wrong. Their intuition is wrong. And a lot of times in these stories, you have a fearful mob that is suspicious of someone and maybe kills them. And at no point did they determine 100% that that was a fake person. It could have been a real innocent person. It doesn't matter. So you might think, oh, well, that's no big deal because, everyone's human and everyone, we don't have to deal with aliens and synths or whatever. But the reason that it's a problem, the reason it's a problem, the reason people want to know who is real and who's not, the actual reason they want to know is it's not, are they made of different materials? No one knows. I mean, no one cares. That's not really what they're trying to figure out. They're not trying to figure out if they were constructed by another human being, because all humans are constructed by their mom. So that's not the real issue. And, one could think that the real issue is, they're mind controlled by this outside source and they have an agenda. Well, that's not really the issue either, because people can be mind controlled and have hidden agendas. I mean, when you take drugs, it changes your state of mind. So that's not really the issue. What the issue really is, and it's not stated in any of these stories, the issue is, does that person have a consciousness or a soul? Same concept, different words for the same concept. That's really what it's about. And that sci-fi story came from real life, because that's always been a question. Without there being any synths or aliens or sci-fi stuff, that's always been a question. And so that's where the story came from. It's just in a sci-fi version. So the existence of the aliens or the robots allows you to more easily put the idea into your mind that, yes, indeed, there are people out there who are not conscious or don't have a human consciousness. So that's really what puts it in your mind, is that, they're a robot or something. But that's not a requirement. I can put it into your mind that, yes, there are a lot of people around you, but what if some of them weren't conscious? What if I told you that 20% of the people you know don't have a consciousness or a soul? And if you believe that to be true, then the next thing you'd be doing is trying to figure out who's a real person and who's not. And there's no way to tell. the only thing you can do, if you believe that 20% of people don't have a soul, the only thing you can do is use your intuition. And you're just basically guessing, and you'll never know if you're right or wrong. And you'll be listening to your friends and family, like how they talk, and you'll be thinking, when they're talking, you'll be thinking, oh man, do they sound like a real human being or not? Of course, that is absolutely ludicrous. However, there are so many people today that actually believe this. There is a large swath of the population that believes that a certain percentage of people do not have a soul or do not have consciousness. And because they have no way of telling for sure, they are left with the kind of mob mentality. All they have are their emotions, their fear and anger and confusion. And so you have a bunch of people who say that they can tell who does and who does not have consciousness through various intuitive means. Like, I've heard a bunch of people say that they can tell if you have a soul just by looking in your eyes. That by itself is ludicrous and outrageous and evil. I don't use the term evil lightly. A lot of people throw around the term evil and they don't really know what it means. What evil means is, well, an example of evil is not knowing what evil means and throwing around the word evil. Evil is basically replacing clear-headed thinking, logical thinking, with baseless beliefs and hyperbolic emotions. That's what evil is. And so these people are just one of an infinite number of examples of this. These people would never listen to someone like me talk about this subject. Well, anyway, this kind of way of thinking requires a dualistic mindset, which has been pushed on us, and that itself is outrageous. The two combined is what I'm trying to warn about. I think that it could turn into something that is worse than any kind of religious war or any kind of atheist, internationalist, Stalinist movement. Worse. It could be the worst thing that's ever happened. So that's why I want to make a video about it. And so far, it's just a funny meme, and the people who use the meme are that's not how they think. People normally, how the meme is oh well, they can't think for themselves. So it's not exactly that, but a lot of people, again, who use the meme are also people who would say something like, oh man, wouldn't that be weird if we're in a simulation? So if you start to actually believe that you're in a simulation, then thinking that there are actual NPCs around is not a big stretch at all. So that's what I'm trying to warn people about. I feel very confident talking about this subject because I can prove that those people are conscious. Because of my that's my area of expertise, really, is understanding. I'm trying to fully understand the mechanism of consciousness, but it's not just me. The issue is pretty much been solved for a long time, starting with Spinoza and Descartes. Descartes had this idea called substance dualism. And one of the issues with substance dualism was that, well, if there's a separation, a dualism between one's material's body and their mind or their spirit, then that means there could be spirits floating around without bodies. Or that could mean that there's bodies walking around without spirits or minds. And in recent decades, that idea has really been pushed on our culture to subvert our collective spirituality. Shortly after this substance dualism idea, Spinoza came out and solved it, basically, with substance monism. Basically invoked or evoked the idea of the monist God, and dualism has pretty much been disproved definitely ever since. In recent decades, actually, this same discussion has kind of cropped up again with David Chalmers and the hard problem of consciousness. The hard problem basically goes like this. So Descartes, he said cogito ergo sum, which means I think therefore I am. And so that is basically at the top of the list of what we or you can know definitively about reality. And that would be related to epistemology. If there's only one thing that you can know for sure, it's that you yourself have a consciousness. And that a lot of people think that that's the only thing that we can know. But I think that there's more things that we can know. So the issue is that, well, okay, so you know that you have a consciousness, but does Steve have a consciousness? I can't do the same test with Steve. I just have to trust him and that he says he's conscious. The same goes with everyone else. And the hard problem was basically focused more on the physicalists who said that consciousness arises out of an arbitrary level of complexity, out of some process happening in the brain. They don't know what. And so the hard problem is, okay, tell me what the process in the brain is. And that's a hard problem, obviously. Which process is it? And the hard problem actually has, for the most part, been solved in the same way as it was solved a long time ago with monism. And really, monism is the solution to pretty much any problem that arises in a religion, because all religions are pretty much monist. And when there's an inconsistency due to dualist thinking, the religious scholars always come out with a monist answer, which solves it. So the solution is monism, which means panpsychism. The solution, therefore, is not that consciousness arises from any kind of variable, but it was always there to begin with, and due to the arrangement of the physical materials, due to the grouping together of the characteristic of consciousness, that leads to big clumps of unified consciousness. So like you have a bunch of atoms that make up your brain, but you have one consciousness. And so then that must be applied to smaller and greater levels. And so that's why people have always been talking about things like the collective consciousness. That's a monist or panpsychic view. And so that is actually the solution to the issue of who does and who does not have a consciousness. And also that's another thing that you can know for sure. So, the actual test, that's a technology we don't have yet. You would have to measure the coherence. Well, first you'd have to prove that, once and for all, that it's proven philosophically, just not, basically you just need more people on board with the idea. You'd have to prove that you'd have to basically identify levels of coherence, and then correlate that with consciousness. Even then, it's really hard to prove, but it's philosophically speaking, it's if something has coherence and is made up of the same materials as your brain, then you can know personally, you can know pretty well that well, so basically what I'm saying is that dualism is dumb and wrong, and there aren't human beings walking around without a soul. So the same thing applies to animals, especially mammals. Mammals are their brains, their systems are made up of the same materials, and they have the same kind of coherence. Oh, by the way, something like an EEG is actually a measurement of coherence, because when there's a change, basically, this is how it works. When there's a change in the data, that means that multiple neurons did something at the same time. They did the same thing at the same time. That's coherence. So basically, an EEG is a rough measurement of coherence, or actually the rate of coherence, I guess. And you can kind of generally tell the state of mind of a person. So basically, if they have EEG readings, and and you're not measuring, like a I don't know, you actually have it on someone's head, and their brain is made up of the same material, and there's readings, then you can know pretty sure that they're conscious. Okay. Same goes with animals, and the same goes with people that are really, really dumb, because people don't realize this, but like the whole concept that there's really smart people that are psychopaths also. There are intelligent people that have murdered, but they're really the idea that they're like psychopaths just pop up randomly. It doesn't matter like if they're smart or dumb. That is subversive also. That's actually a lie that goes against basically a psychopath or personality disorder is due to, or it's actually the same thing as having a low IQ, because empathy requires actually a lot of thought process. I'm not talking about like a doctor, like some smart guy, he's like really good at math, but he was like rude to you one time. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are they murder and steal because they just felt like it at the time, and they didn't realize there were options. It's just there's no they have no remorse, and then they brag about it because they don't they're not trying to hide it because they're not smart enough to. So that's why you have a bunch of psychopaths in prison, because they have low IQ. But just because they have a low IQ and they're psychopaths and have absolutely no empathy at all and are killers and shouldn't be around, just because of that doesn't to then go on and say, well, they're not a human being and they don't have a soul. That is a huge jump in logic, and I guarantee that even though they're really evil and dumb, they are a human being with consciousness and a soul. If you were to put them down, the reason should not be because, oh well, it's okay because they don't have a soul. No, the reason should be it shouldn't be any moral reason either. I mean, it's wrong to kill people. It's wrong to kill animals. But if the reason to put someone like that down is for a purely pragmatic reason, to improve society. And making a decision like that is very difficult, but the world is a harsh place. So yeah, that's I think that's pretty much it. Just wanted to point out these things. Not really a political thing. I mean, it's being pushed for political reasons. It's being manufactured for political reasons. And I have to at least state that fact. But beyond that, it's just an interesting kind of philosophical topic that people should be more knowledgeable in. It shouldn't be like, mysterious kind of thing, like, what if? And it's really not that complicated. It's not that difficult to think through. To accept the idea of the collective consciousness and panpsychism, that's a bit out there. But if you actually stop and think about the alternatives, there's actually 4 ways to think about it. And the panpsychism ways, it actually makes the most sense and explains things the best. And also, a few decades ago, science had been completely monist. All the major scientists, even in quantum physics, they're all monists and believed in God, the monist God. In fact, science was developed by Neoplatonist Christians, Western science. And all religions are monist. It's really only in the past few decades, in the past generation in the West, that there's been a mass obfuscation, and it is due to political subversion, spiritual subversion. I mean, the two things are intertwined, obviously, because the word spirit is synonymous with mind, and everything is related. I'm not a political person, but sometimes I feel like I have a better grasp on things than most political commentators. So yeah, thanks for watching.